City design and surveillance. How ancient Rome controlled its citizens. The Roman Republic did not collapse. It engineered its own obedience. And what Rome built in stone, we now build in glass and code. The empire never ended. It simply changed its shape. From the steps of the Capitol in Washington to the glass towers of Wall Street. From the highways that carve across America to the algorithms that chart our every move online, Rome is not gone. Rome is here. 2,000 years ago, citizens of the Republic believed they were free. They cast votes. They watched senators debate. They marched in triumphs. But behind the pageantry, their power was already gone. The Senate became a stage. Elections became ritual. Citizens became spectators in a theater of control, and they cheered, even as their freedom evaporated. Sound familiar? Rome paved its streets in stone. We pave ours in asphalt and data. Rome staged gladiator games. We stage digital circuses glowing in every hand. Rome etched NSPQR, the Senate, and people of Rome on every monument. We inscribe we the people on documents, dollars, and screens. But whose voice truly rules? The genius of Rome was not in crushing freedom, but in disguising its absence. Citizens still felt included, even as they were managed. They mistook obedience for order, distraction for democracy, and when the Republic finally vanished, most never noticed it was gone. History whispers, empires do not fall with a scream, they fade with applause. Empires don't die, they adapt. So, before we begin the story of Rome, its rise, its glory, its fall, ask yourself one question. What empire are you living in today? Because this is not just their history, it may be yours. The city as a cage. Empires rarely die of enemies, they die of erosion, and erosion often begins in the streets. From the sky, if you could have seen it, the city of Rome appeared eternal. A white crown of marble and brick rising from the banks of the Tiber, glowing in sunlight like the seat of destiny. Roads radiated outward like veins from a beating heart, carrying soldiers, grain, and news to the farthest corners of the empire. To an outsider, this was civilization at its height. To a Roman citizen walking those streets, it was life itself. But to the rulers of Rome, it was something far more precise: control. The city was never neutral. It was designed as a machine, a living apparatus that guided its people, monitored them, distracted them, and when necessary, caged them. Take the Roman road system. Over 250,000 miles of stone and gravel, paved with such engineering precision that some still survive today. For the merchant, the roads were veins of prosperity. For the soldier, they were paths of conquest. But for the citizen, they were silent reminders. No matter how far you went, you were always under Rome's shadow. Every milestone carved with imperial insignia told you who truly owned the land beneath your feet. By Augustus's reign, Rome likely approached 1 million inhabitants, an often cited estimate scholars still debate. Managing such a mass required more than soldiers. It required psychological design. A lesser-known detail lies in the streets themselves. In the wealthy quarters, avenues were broad, straight, and lined with marble colonnades. In poorer districts, alleys were narrow and twisting products of organic growth that, conveniently, became natural choke points when unrest flared. If riots broke out, as they often did, the people could be funneled, trapped, silenced. Architecture became law without words. Consider Washington, D.C., a Baroque lattice of grand diagonals and vistas after L'Enfant's plan. And in Paris, Haussmann's wide boulevards were expressly meant to thwart barricades and speed troop movement. Monumental plans, even when framed as beautification, shape where crowds gather or disperse. The principle is the same. Rome paved with stone. We pave with asphalt and watch through cameras. Step into the Forum, the heart of Roman public life. On its surface, it was a place of democracy, senators speaking, citizens voting, merchants selling. But look closer. Looming above were temples, arches, and statues, all reminders of power. Every purchase of bread happened beneath the eyes of Jupiter's temple. Every political debate took place under the shadow of Caesar's monuments. Freedom? Yes, but always framed by the emperor's presence. Freedom framed is freedom tamed. The genius of Roman control was that it rarely announced itself as control. Citizens were not dragged in chains, they were guided, enticed, absorbed into a system where even leisure and worship reinforced loyalty. The aqueduct that brought water was also a reminder of imperial benevolence. The amphitheater that entertained also absorbed potential rebellion. The basilica that housed legal courts echoed with the emperor's decrees. Daily life became ritual submission. And yet, to the Roman mind, it felt natural. A farmer receiving grain at the Forum did not think of surveillance. A craftsman walking a narrow alley did not imagine he was being contained. They thought of Rome as eternal, and themselves as part of its destiny. The cage was invisible precisely because it was comfortable. This is the psychology of empires. Chains disguised as gifts, order disguised as freedom. A citizenry that mistakes management for safety. Sound familiar? Today, our own cities bear the same fingerprints. Highways that cut through neighborhoods, funneling populations along controlled routes. Public squares saturated with cameras, every face cataloged. Stadiums that promise escape, yet keep attention fixed on spectacle. What Rome did with stone, we do with glass and silicon. Rome even stationed a special urban cohort police like forces tasked with maintaining order in the city itself. They patrolled markets, monitored taverns, and watched for unrest. It was the ancient ancestor of modern surveillance, a reminder that no corner of the empire was truly private. Imagine walking those streets 2,000 years ago. Above you, triumphal arches proclaim victories in distant lands you'd never see. Around you, guards stationed at choke points, beneath your feet, stones worn smooth by generations walking the same controlled paths. And always, the sense that the city itself was watching you. The empire conquered not just by sword, but by space. By turning geography into psychology, by shaping thought with stone. The city was a pioneer, and the people, though free to move, never truly left it. And here lies the first revelation. Rome did not merely build a city, it built a mind, a way of seeing, of moving, of obeying. A city so perfectly engineered for control that its shadow still lingers. So ask yourself when you step into your city today, when you drive on its highways, when you stand in its stadiums, do you walk freely, or do you still walk inside Rome's design? Bread, games, and the psychology of distraction. A loaf of bread torn in two, dissolving into the roar of a Colosseum crowd. Rome's rulers discovered a secret more enduring than conquest. People are not governed by force alone, but by appetite and attention. Hunger breeds unrest, fear breeds protest, but a full stomach and a dazzled mind, that breeds silence. This was the alchemy of power in the ancient world. Panem et circenses, bread and circuses. The policy was deceptively simple. Feed the people, entertain the people, and they will forget they are not free. By the 1st century BCE, Rome's population had grown so large, over 1 million souls crammed into its walls, that chaos always loomed. Grain became the lifeline of the city, shipped across the Mediterranean from the fertile fields of Sicily and later, the inexhaustible Nile Valley of Egypt. Without it, riots broke out within days. With it, the city purred in contentment. By the reign of Augustus, more than 200,000 citizens received free or heavily subsidized grain through the annona. This dole was not charity, it was strategy. Rome's emperors understood that feeding a man bound him with a debt stronger than chains. But here is the lesser-known detail. Many recipients carried tesserae frumentarii tokens, or passes attested in sources to claim rations. The precise procedures varied by period, but the outcome was clear. Distribution doubled as counting and control. They lined up in vast porticos and warehouses, observed, counted, cataloged as they collected their ration. The state knew who you were, how much you consumed, where you belonged. The bread was real, but so was the surveillance. Bread alone was not enough. A fed belly could still dream of rebellion. And so the emperors gave Rome its greatest drug, spectacle. The amphitheaters became temples of distraction. The Colosseum, seating 50,000, swallowed discontent whole. Inside, gladiators clashed in choreographed violence. Criminals were executed in public rituals of punishment. Exotic animals from Africa and Asia were paraded, slain, or forced into grotesque battles that dramatized Rome's mastery over the world. The arena wasn't entertainment, it was ideology, written in blood and sand. Admission was typically free, underwritten by emperors or magistrates. Entry and seating were tightly controlled, and class-segregated elites nearest the emperor. The poor in the upper tiers. Even leisure reinforced hierarchy. Even joy reminded the people of their place. And the emperor presided above it all, framed in his gilded box, the giver of games. To cheer in the arena was to cheer for him. Every laugh, every roar, every gasp became loyalty expressed in sound. Juvenal, the sharp-tongued satirist of Rome, saw it clearly. The people have long since given up their vote, their freedom. They care only for two things, bread and circuses. His words were less satire than prophecy. Bread buys time, spectacle buys consent. Sound familiar? Today, the circuses glow in pixels, endless cycles of televised sports, reality shows, streaming series. Celebrity scandals are modern spectacles. And bread comes not only in loaves, but in subsidies, stimulus checks, loyalty points. The principle endures. Tie survival to the state. Tie attention to the screen. Consider how national mega events, like the Super Bowl or World Cup, are wrapped in pageantry military flyovers. Anthems, flag-waving entertainment infused with civic ritual. It feels communal, but it also channels passion away from politics and into distraction. Rome was not the first to feed and entertain its people, but it perfected the system. The genius was not cruelty, it was seduction. People chained themselves willingly when the cage was padded with bread and decorated with spectacle. But the formula carried a hidden cost. The Republic had been built on civic duty, on citizens who debated, voted, sacrificed for the common good. Now those same citizens queued for bread in the morning and screamed for gladiators in the afternoon. They had become spectators of life, not participants in it. And once a people trade participation for entertainment, the soul of their republic is already gone. The erosion was subtle but fatal. Politics became theater. Governance became performance. Citizenship became audience. And in that transformation, Rome's heart hollowed. The empire thrived outwardly even as its inner life decayed. The Colosseum still stands today, but not as it once was. Tourists marvel at its arches, unaware that those stones once echoed with the sound of a people forgetting their freedom. And perhaps that is the deepest lesson of all. Empires are not lost only on battlefields. They are lost in breadlines and cheering stands. So ask yourself, when you sit in the stadium, when you queue for benefits, when you scroll endlessly through glowing circuses, what role are you playing? Citizen or spectator? Because Rome whispers, distraction is not harmless. It is the first act of erosion. And erosion, once begun, is very hard to stop. Laws, ledgers, and surveillance. The Republic didn't fall. It voted itself out and recorded every name of those who accepted it. Rome's might was not only in legions, marble, or conquest. Its deepest power was quieter, sharper, and more enduring: the ledger. Empires may be built with armies, but they are maintained with lists. Rome understood what all modern powers understand, that knowledge is control, and information is the purest weapon of surveillance. In the Republic, a civic census was ritually taken every 5 years lustrum by the censors. Under the emperors, large-scale counts became irregular across regions. In Roman Egypt, declarations followed a 14-year cycle. Names, wies, children, wealth, property, slaves, everything laid bare. To fail was unthinkable. A man who refused could lose his citizenship, his land, even his honor. The ritual of the census was more than bureaucracy, it was theater. It reminded every Roman that his life, down to the last acre of field and last child born, belonged first to the state. The census was overseen by censors, magistrates so powerful they could reshape the Senate itself, expelling corrupt men, elevating others, redrawing the boundaries of status. They were not accountants, they were engineers of society. And yet, here lies the lesser-known detail. The census was moral judgment as much as measurement. Citizens were asked not only what they owned, but how they lived. A man guilty of vice could be demoted in status. A life of virtue could be rewarded. Surveillance was not only external, it invaded conscience. Rome did not just track behavior, it policed morality. Rome extended this surveillance outward across its empire. Governors kept meticulous rolls of taxes and tributes. Army commanders cataloged every soldier, every piece of armor, every ration consumed. Legal clerks etched contracts in stone, archived for eternity. Papyrus fragments from Egypt survive to this day, recording with startling precision the number of goats, chickens, and barley sacks owned by farmers. The empire's gaze reached into barns, cupboards, even cradles. Sound familiar? Today's census, tax IDs, biometric scans, new names for old ledgers. Where Rome scratched wax tablets, we log into databases. Where Rome carved stone inscriptions of law, we scroll through digital statutes. The principle is unchanged: to count is to own. Consider this: in the Gospel of Luke, the story of Jesus' birth is set in motion by a decree from Caesar Augustus that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. Scholars debate the details, linking it to Quirinius' 6 CE censuses in Judea and Egypt's 14-year cycle. But the point remains, a single imperial edict could uproot families and inscribe identities. The ledger altered destiny itself. Roman census declarations from Egypt, written on papyrus, survive with startling intimacy. One farmer wrote, "I, Appian, declare that I have one wife, 2 sons, 3 goats, and land of 3 aurore." Every detail of his life, every private possession, laid bare to an empire that stretched over continents. Armies conquer, ledgers endure. Can you imagine your entire existence? Spouse, children, animals reduced to ink on a scroll held by distant rulers. But Rome's surveillance was not just about record keeping. It was also about presence. The urban cohorts, a kind of ancient police force, patrolled the streets of Rome. They kept watch over markets, taverns, theaters. They reported disturbances, monitored gatherings, and ensured that no crowd turned into a mob. Combine this with the vigils, fire brigades that doubled as watchmen, and you have a city under constant eyes. Privacy, as we imagine it, did not exist. And then there was the law. Rome's legal system, the foundation of Western jurisprudence, was vast and meticulous. Rights and duties were codified in painstaking detail, etched into bronze tablets, displayed publicly in forums. The 12 tables, the edicts of praetors, the rescripts of emperor's law was visible everywhere, not as a shield for the weak, but as a structure of order. Justice wore the emperor's face. Yet the deeper genius of Rome's surveillance was psychological. To be in the ledger was to exist. To be excluded was to vanish. Citizens began to equate being counted with being valued. What began as submission hardened into pride. A Roman boasted not of freedom, but of being inscribed in the rolls of empire. This was control disguised as belonging. Today, we feel invisible without IDs, without credit histories, without online profiles. Our sense of existence is tethered to being registered, counted, recognized by the system. The greatest trick of power is not in watching you, it's in making you want to be watched. And so, the erosion of freedom began not with swords, but with styluses. Not with battles lost, but with names written. Rome did not need to chain every man. It only needed every man to step forward willingly, declare his life, and accept that the empire owned it. What empire are you living in today? One where your movements are tracked by algorithms, your purchases logged, your preferences profiled? One where cameras and data replace sensors and wax tablets? Rome whispers across time, the most effective surveillance is not feared. It is embraced. The question, then, is not whether you are free. It is whether you have mistaken being counted for being valued. And when that day comes, when surveillance feels like safety and registration feels like pride, the erosion has already begun. Architecture of obedience. Stone remembers longer than men, and Rome built in stone. The city of Rome was not just a capital, it was a sermon in marble. A labyrinth where every turn, every wall, every towering structure whispered the same lesson. Power is eternal. You are not. The city itself was designed as a machine of obedience. When a citizen left his cramped insula apartment and stepped into the street, he entered a theater carefully staged by emperors. Arches, temples, basilicas, columns, they did not merely rise. They loomed, they spoke, they told him who he was, and more importantly, who he was not. Take the Arch of Titus. To us, it is ruin weathered stone, tourists passing beneath. To them, it was scripture. Built in 81 CE, it celebrated the Flavian dynasty's conquest of Jerusalem. Its reliefs showed Roman soldiers carrying sacred treasures, the menorah, trumpets, sacred vessels. To the casual Roman, it was pride. To the conquered Jew forced to walk beneath it, it was humiliation immortalized. But to every passerby, it was a reminder: Rome is victorious, Rome is merciless, Rome endures. The Arch of Titus was erected along the Via Sacra, the sacred way, where triumphal processions wound through the city. Every celebration of victory marched through it. Citizens couldn't avoid it. It was positioned like a throat through which the empire forced its people to swallow its power daily. Inscriptions on such monuments often credited the Senate and people of Rome, SPQR, with commissioning them. But the truth was harsher. The money came from taxes, often squeezed from the very provinces paraded as conquered. The people themselves paid for the monuments that reminded them of their own subjugation. Now look to the Colosseum. Its scale overwhelms even now, a giant of stone and shadow, seating over 50,000. But its true genius was not size, it was structure. The seating itself was stratified: senators closest, equestrians behind, plebeians above, women and the poor at the top. The Colosseum was a diagram of society, every seat a lesson in hierarchy. The citizen didn't just watch the spectacle, he sat inside one. Consider today's stadiums, divided into tiers: luxury boxes, VIP entrances. Entertainment is hierarchy dressed in lights. The lesson is subtle, but it endures. Even leisure reminds you of your place. Rome's temples were no less political. The temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus dominated the Capitoline Hill, its columns towering over the Forum. It was the first thing you saw when you looked up, the last thing you forgot when you walked away. Worship was not just piety, it was patriotism. To bow to Jupiter was to affirm Rome. The gods themselves were enlisted as instruments of control. And then, the Pantheon, the most astonishing architectural survival of antiquity. Its dome still reigns, a perfect sphere of concrete, unchallenged for nearly 2,000 years. Inside, the oculus, the great eye of heaven, poured light upon worshippers like the gaze of the cosmos itself. But remember, this was not only a temple to all gods, it was a temple to the empire's vision of itself as eternal, cosmic, universal. To stand beneath the Pantheon's dome was to be enveloped by Rome's promise and Rome's command. One eye, one circle of light, a million gazes lowered. The Pantheon's inscription still reads, Agrippa left custodium fecit, Marcus Agrippa, son of Lucius, made this when consul for the third time. A humble credit line. But the building standing today was rebuilt under Hadrian, who chose not to inscribe his own name. Why? To link himself seamlessly to Rome's past, erasing individuality into eternal continuity. Architecture was not just obedience, it was immortality. But perhaps the most insidious element of Roman architecture was its ubiquity. You could not escape it. The Via Sacra, the sacred way, was lined with monuments. Basilicas loomed where legal cases were tried. Baths displayed imperial beneficence with mosaics of emperors. Even aqueducts, purely practical, were crowned with inscriptions reminding citizens who gave them water. Rome engineered gratitude. And when new emperors rose, they built. They erected arches, forums, markets, statues. Each new ruler plastered his legacy over the last, layering obedience generation by generation. Augustus built the Forum of Augustus, with a temple to Mars the Avenger, aligning his personal revenge for Caesar's murder with divine justice. Trajan built markets so vast they became known as the world's first shopping mall, a place where commerce, architecture, and propaganda fused into one. Think of how governments today mark space. Washington, D.C. And with its neoclassical facades, its Washington Monument pointing heavenward. Beijing's Tiananmen Square, vast and empty, designed for mass gatherings under watchful eyes. Paris's Arc de Triomphe, positioned like a crown upon the Champs-Élysées. The Roman instinct survives. Build in stone what you want the people to believe in silence. Rome's architecture made obedience effortless. Citizens were not ordered to bow. They were compelled to look up, to marvel, to feel small. And in that awe, submission became natural. Stone taught loyalty more effectively than swords. The genius of Rome was not simply conquest by legions, but conquest by landscape. It shaped not only how people lived, but how they thought. The city itself was a sermon repeated every morning and every evening. Step into the forum, pass under arches, kneel in temples, cheer in stadiums, and without realizing, you had pledged allegiance anew. And here lies the revelation. Architecture is never neutral. It is always a choice, always a command. Rome did not merely build buildings, it built obedience. And its stone sermons still stand, whispering across millennia. So ask yourself, when you walk beneath arches of marble, when you gaze up at towers of glass, when you sit in stadiums or memorial halls, are you admiring beauty? Or are you walking inside a message carefully designed to make you obey? Because Rome shows us this: you are never just walking in a city, you are walking in a command. A silent order carved into stone. From SPQR to the algorithm. Rome carved SPQR into stone. We carve our identities into code. Everywhere in Rome, 4 letters glimmered in the sun. SPQR Senatus Populusque Romanus, the Senate and people of Rome. They were etched on triumphal arches, stamped on coins, painted on shields, even stitched into legion banners. For the citizen, they seemed reassuring, a reminder that the people still mattered, that the Republic endured. But those 4 letters were a mask, concealing the truth. The Senate had become a formality, the people a chorus, and the emperors alone held the script. Even during the reign of absolute rulers like Nero or Domitian, monuments still bore SPQR, as if Rome were still a republic. The illusion of democracy was preserved centuries after its death. Citizens looked up and saw their name carved into stone, but their voices had long been silenced. Many inscriptions credit the Senate and people as builders of temples or arches. But records reveal that these projects were financed not by citizens, but by imperial coffers, or worse, by crushing provincial taxes. The phrase was theater. Romans paid for their own subjugation, then applauded themselves in marble. Rome's genius was not in abolishing freedom, but in disguising its absence. Citizens still marched in processions, voted in assemblies, cheered in games. They felt part of something vast, yet every choice was managed, every ritual directed, every outcome predetermined. Freedom was a performance, staged for an audience that mistook it for reality. Sound familiar? Today, our own world is etched not in marble but in algorithms. Where Rome used stone, we use code. Where SPQR proclaimed the illusion of shared power, platforms proclaim you have a voice online. But who shapes that voice and to what end? From stone to silicon, the illusion endures. Think of it, Rome's ledgers counted citizens, tracked property, mapped provinces. Today, databases track your clicks, purchases, preferences. Rome staged circuses to distract. Today, algorithms serve endless streams of entertainment, curated outrage, and digital noise. Rome etched SPQR to remind citizens they were included. Today, we scroll through feeds that assure us our opinions matter while steering them in directions unseen. In the US, a handful of corporations mediate what billions see each day. In China, algorithms enforce political orthodoxy. In Europe, debates rage over who owns data. The medium is new, but the pattern is ancient. Power masks itself as freedom, surveillance as service, control as convenience. Rome's stadium seating was divided by class, senators at the front, plebeians in the back. Today, digital spaces stratify the same way paywalls, VIP subscriptions, premium access. Hierarchy lives on, disguised as choice. Even the language echoes. SPQR said, "You are the people. This is your empire." Today's systems say, "You are the user. This is your feed." Both are masks hiding where real power lies. The erosion is subtle. Rome's citizens believed they still lived in a republic because the symbols never vanished. We believe we live in a democracy because the rituals remain ballots cast, comments posted, voices raised. But what if participation itself is performance? What if the arena has simply changed? Here is the deeper truth. Rome did not fall in one night. It hollowed out slowly, as citizens stopped questioning, stopped engaging, stopped seeing the cage for what it was. Bread replaced duty, circuses replaced debate, SPQR replaced power with symbol. And today, screens replace assemblies. Algorithms replace deliberation, engagement replaces action. So ask yourself when you cheer in the stadium, when you scroll the feed, when you vote in systems you do not control, are you a citizen or are you a spectator? Because Rome whispers, the empire never ends. It only changes its script. Rome's monuments may lie in ruins, but its systems breathe in us. Roads reborn as highways, ledgers reborn as databases. Circuses reborn as streams and screens. SPQR reborn as slogans of freedom, masking obedience in plain sight. We inherit what we forget, and what we forget, we repeat. So look around your city, your screen, your society, and ask yourself, are we building a republic or rehearsing its funeral rites in slow motion? One distraction at a time. Because history is not past, it is present, dressed in new clothes. And the empire you think you've left behind may be the one you're still living in. And now the question passes to you. What empire are you living in today? Your turn to answer. Tell me in the comments, I'll be reading them. If this made you think, tap like, hit follow, and drop your take below. History isn't finished, it's repeating. Your voice decides whether we repeat the fall or write a different ending.